Today we're going to continue on discussing the most valuable rookie cards, part 7A1, speculating on obscure players and those with fascinating stories, 1947 to 1989, including Roberto Clemente. This takes us into a topic that probably is more about the fun of collecting and the challenges and interesting phenomena of collecting that I'm sure that you'll be informed as well as learn great stories about players, some of which you may have never even heard of. So we start with a player that goes prior to 1950, the modern age of baseball cards, individual named Clint Hartung, who was nicknamed the Hondo Hurricane, played from 1947 to 1952. He signed with the Giants for $35,000 in 1947, which was an incredible sum of money at that particular time for baseball players. He was on the Major League Baseball's radar after playing on the World War II military team, where he not only hit for a .567 average, but also as a pitcher was 25-0. He hit a home run as a pitcher and afterwards a home run as a position player, and he was the only one to do this other than Babe Ruth himself. We'll learn that there's one other player later on that also completes this task. Unfortunately, though he had all these accolades prior to entering the Major League Baseball, his 6 years in the majors was unimpressive. Sometimes people joke that there should be a Clint Hartung Award for the most overhyped rookie of each season. Now, Roberto Clemente is no stranger to those baseball fans and people who are lovers of baseball and heroes, and he played right field for the Pirates from 1955 to 1972. He had an 18-year career. In 1954, he was from Puerto Rico, and unlike most players, he was signed for 5 years with the draft of the Dodgers. 1955, he was picked by the Pirates in Rule 5 draft, paid $4,000 and made his major league debut. And unfortunately, at that particular time in the history of the United States, lots of racial tensions, which frustrated Clemente a good deal. 1958 to 1959, he was a member of the Marine Corps Reserves during the off-season. His career stats included a 317 batting average, 3,000 hits, 240 home runs, and 1,305 RBIs. He was 15 times an All-Star, 2 times World Series, 1960 and 1971. He was MVP, and 12 Gold Glove awards, tying for the most with Willie Mays, and 4 times the National Baseball Champion. And you can see this reflected in the cards. Certainly the cards of tops that were the batting leaders. There's an interesting cartoon card which kind of emphasizes all his achievements. As I said, was an all-star on 15 times, and he also played in the World Series, and he was the MVP. So lots and lots of reasons why he was a shoo-in when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. He hit the only walk-off inside the park grand slam home run in the history of baseball. He hit 3 triples in 1 game, and he had 10 hits in 2 consecutive games. So all these were kind of achievements that he had during his amazing career. Unfortunately, he goes down known for his tragic death, and as a result, we have the Roberto Clemente Award. So as you can see, this is his last card, which has all his statistics, and he was a caring person as he dedicated time during the off-season to charity. But there was an earthquake in Nicaragua in 1972. And being concerned and a compassionate person, he arranged relief flights to bring aid to that country. The first of these 3 flights were diverted as a result of corruption in the government in Nicaragua. So he decided on the next trip that he would accompany it on that 4th trip, which took off New Year's Eve. This plane he took had a history of mechanical problems. It had an insufficient flight personnel, and the plane was overloaded with supplies. As a result, unfortunately, the plane crashed in the Atlantic off the coast of Puerto Rico. Very sad time for baseball. He had told his wife on numerous occasions he would die young, and he was a very religious person, a devout Catholic. So as a result of his astonishing career, as well as his sacrifice in terms of helping others, they developed the Clemente Award, which originally was called the Commissioner's Award in 1971 and 1972, and changed to the Clemente Award, and it is given to the player with the outstanding playing skill who is personally involved with community work. They are awarded a trophy and a check to their favorite charity, which is presented at the World Series and decided on by a panel of 3. And Roberto is remembered both in monuments, statues, and in plaques. Steve Blass was a right-handed pitcher for the Pirates from 1964 and 1966 through 1974. He, in 1960, signed with the Pirates out of high school. In 1964, he made his major league debut with the Pirates at the age of 22. In 1971, he won the World Series and was second in voting for the World Series MVP. He was the last pitcher to throw a complete game in Game 7 of the World Series, and he was featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated with a very interesting article inside. 1972, he was an All-Star, and that year he was runner-up for the National League Cy Young Award. 1973 was an unfortunate year for Steve Blass, and he created, through his actions, what is eventually termed the Steve Blass disease, or also known as the Yips. And what this is a sudden loss of control. And so as a pitcher, Steve Blass, all of a sudden, despite his very successful career, started throwing walks and ended up with a 9.81 ERA. So it was a confusing thing in terms of why he all of a sudden started to crash and burn as far as his pitching prowess. In 1974, he was delegated to the minors and retired. His career stats were 103 wins and 76 losses, an ERA of 3.63, and 896 strikeouts, as you can see in his final card and the stats. And he wrote a book that Steve Blass, A Pirate for Life, in 2012, where he discusses his career as well as this Steve Blass disease. Now, the Steve Blass disease, as we said, also known as the Yips, is a sudden loss of control. And why he lost it, it's still confusing. Some will say, or even he had mentioned, that it possibly was due to the grieving the loss of his teammate Roberto Clemente, who had died the year before in December. But most professionals in the field of psychology kind of have explained it as a condition where it's kind of a cycle of negativity, and there are many theories in terms of what to do about it, and basically using mental strategies has been the solution. And we'll see that many players have been able to overcome this with the help of psychotherapy. Other players kind of go under this lexicon, which again is an inexplainable and permanent loss of the ability to throw a baseball accurately. So the players that have struggled with this are Ricky and Keel in 2000, Mark Wohler in 1998, Dontrell Willis in 2007, Rick Romero in 2012, Daniel Bard in 2012, and Tyler Matzek in 2014. So as pitchers, this is a point where all of a sudden they begin to lose control, and possibly due to issues that deal with their mind and confidence. So in 1961, there was a player that became well known for kind of something different than his baseball prowess, and that was Tommy, nicknamed the Bionic Man John, Tommy John, who played baseball from 1963 to 1989. He signed in 1961 with the Indians. In 1963, he made his major league debut. 1968, he was an all-star, and he was injured in a fight with Dick McAuliffe that season. But 1964, he tore his ulnar collateral ligament, UCL, and missed the entire 75 season, recovering from surgery for that, and a particular type of surgery that was kind of new and unique for this injury, which was actually common in baseball pitchers throughout the history of baseball. But he was the first pitcher to return successfully following surgery. And this type of surgery has been termed Tommy John surgery, and we'll see it throughout the rest of the baseball era as a common surgery that many players get, because this UCL injury is very common in not only pitchers, but even we'll find in other players. When overhead throwing athletes constantly use the elbow, a great deal of stress is placed on the inside, called the medial ligaments. The ulnar collateral ligament, the UCLA, is particularly susceptible to injury and often tears. So the ligament connects the two arm bones at the elbow when it gets torn, usually from overuse. And you can see in the photo that when there is torn, that it can be repaired by a particular type of surgery called the Tommy John surgery. An interesting side is that there is an underwear company that is called Tommy John. It is not connected with Tommy John. In fact, he looked into suing the company for using his name, and realized that just the cost of the lawyer would be over what he really cared to expend, plus the time to sue them. So it was never followed up. So the Tommy Bionic Man John was 1977 in the World Series, and he had a 20-win season that year. 1989 was tied for record of the most seasons pitched, 26. In 1991, he wrote a book, Tommy John, My 25 Years in Baseball. 2012, we see here in terms of the graph, 1 in 7 Major League Baseball pitchers have received Tommy John surgery at some point in their career. So the kind of unique thing is this was season or career ending prior to this surgery, and following Tommy John's experience, it allows players to get this, miss a year or so, but be able to return. And Tommy John exemplifies that one can return and be successful as they continue their career. Tommy John played for the Indians, White Sox, Dodgers, Yankees, Angels, and A's. And this was his career over that time, 288 wins and 231 losses, 3.34 ERA, and 2,245 strikeouts, and 4 times an All-Star. It's the third most wins, 288, of any pitcher not in the Hall of Fame since 1990. So there's lots of arguments that Tommy John should be in the Hall of Fame, and that is to be seen in terms of the future voting for veterans. He was in 3 World Series appearances, but had no World Series championships. So kind of continuing on with this same phenomenon that we see Steve Blass, Tommy John, we have Steve Sax, who was a second baseman for the Dodgers, played from 1981 to 1991. He was a 229th draft pick of the Dodgers in 1978. 1981, he made his major league debut with the Dodgers, playing 31 games, but was in the World Series. 1982, he was Rookie of the Year. 1983, now we have sort of like the Steve Blass disease, but it's called the Steve Sax syndrome. It's Fielder's version of the Steve Blass disease. And he was incapable of making routine throws to first base. Now remember, the second baseman, so it's not that long of a throw. And this particular year, he just lost his control in throwing to first base and made 30 errors. First base fans mocked him by wearing helmets along the first base line. 1989, he actually was cured from this syndrome, and he led the league in fielding percentage and double play. So again, alluding to the fact that this can be treated by psychotherapy, and one can continue there and be quite successful in their career. His career, he batted .281, 54 home runs, 550 RBIs, 444 stolen bases, 5 times an All-Star, and 2 times in the World Series. So the Steve Sax syndrome, aka fielder's yip, remember Steve Blass disease was the pitcher's yips, was experienced by other players that people have observed over the course of time in Major League Baseball. So Dale Murphy was a 2-time MVP, came up actually as a catcher, but because of this yips, he actually moved to the outfield and is known for his career with the Braves as a outfielder. Mackey Sasser in 1989, he could not throw back to the pitcher, and he was moved to the outfield. Yared Saltalamacchia, in 2010, he was a catcher and had difficulty in his control and just throwing back to the pitcher, saw a psychologist and corrected this condition. Matt Garza in 2012 made bad throws to first as a pitcher, but he could throw 95 miles per hour accurately to batters. So you can see the uniqueness in terms of the mind and the control here. John Lester, 2014, could not throw to ball anywhere except to home plate. And in fact, he kind of corrected his ability to kind of keep players on base by bouncing the ball to first base. And finally, Chuck Knobloch in 1999, developed Steve Sax syndrome. He had been the Rookie of the Year, 4 times All-Star in a World Series, 1 Golden Gloves at second base. When he was traded to the Yankees, he had trouble then throwing to first base, and he was moved to the outfield. So a lot of history behind these fielder's yips as well as pitcher's yips, but it is correctable. 1962, Maury Wills made the 1963 Fleer baseball card set historical. So why did he make it historical? Well, for several reasons. One is that even though he was the most valuable player in 1962, Topps kept him out of their baseball card set until 1967. What was the flap? Well, Willis was not considered a valid star by Topps, and so they failed to recognize him. Miffed by this, then Wills decided not to sign with Topps, but signed exclusively contract with Fleer. So his rookie card actually is in that 1963 Fleer baseball set. However, in 1982, Kmart included Wills to complete their run of MVP players in their 1982 Kmart set, and kind of put it on a vintage card of Topps of the 1962, what it would have looked like. Topps even came out in 1987 with a 62 reproduction of Wills on their 62 card. And then when Topps did their 75 review of most valuable players, they also used this 1962 edition. What made him actually also known within the archives of baseball history is that he broke the record and held the record for quite a time until Rickey Henderson, having 104 stolen bases, as shown in the back of his 1963 Fleer card. 1964, we have Rick Ryer, and he is unofficially credited with the creation of the Major League Baseball draft. So why would this particular player be responsible for the draft? Well, it goes back his history. He was a fullback, actually, in 1962 of the number 2 ranked Wisconsin, who lost to number 1 Southern California that year in the championship game. He, when he applied to basically become a Major League Baseball player, there was a bidding war ensued for his signing in baseball between Chuck Finley of the A's and Gene Autry of the Angels. The A's actually won the bid, but he went to the Angels instead. And there was much in the sporting news. It's kind of comical that this kind of picture, you can see it almost looks like there's a halo over his head for the Angels. And in California, which was famous at that time for Walt Disney, they even made a plate for him at Disney World. In 1964, he received a $200,000, which would be equivalent to $1.8 million today, signing bonus from the Angels, which is a record for that particular time. So he was basically the highest paid rookie of all time when he entered the league in 1964. It was a bidding war for Riker that ultimately led to Major League Baseball to institute a draft, which started in 1965. So that is the unofficial story behind why the draft started, based on this bidding war that took place to acquire Rick Riker. In 1966, unfortunately, he was diagnosed with a kidney ailment that necessitated the removal of the kidney, and he was never quite the same as he was when he first entered the league. He retired in 1974. Another actually popular player, this wouldn't fit into the obscure player, was Thurmond the Walrus Munson. He was a catcher for the New York Yankees and played from 1969 to 1979, actually had an 11-year career. He was a fourth draft pick in 1968. In 1969, he debuted as Rookie of the Year. He 1976, he became the Yankee captain and was the American League Most Valuable Player. He was in 3 World Series, won 3 Golden Glove, and he was primarily known for his outstanding fielding, and he was in 7 All-Star games. The only player to bat 300 and have 20 RBIs and 20 people caught stealing. Unfortunately, and very sadly, in 1971, he died in an air crash, actually practicing Lambo. He was a plane owner and was kind of developing his skills in flying. And Steinbrenner, who was the owner of the Yankees, wanted Munson to stop flying, and to do so, he actually threatened to trade him, but Munson ignored the warnings and unfortunately had his premature death. He has a career that ended in 1979. He batted .292, 223 home runs, 7 and 1 RBIs, and a 46.1 WAR. The Yankees retired his number 5. Very interesting player, kind of again, this would definitely be obscure, is a player named Herb Washington. And he was actually not a baseball player in the sense of hitting and fielding, but he was a professional pinch runner, as you can see on these cards that were produced for him, that in his position, he is pictured here as a designated runner or a pinch runner. The story behind Herb Washington, in 1972, he ran the 50-yard dash in 5 seconds and was considered the world's fastest man. In 1973, he was the 334th pick by the Baltimore Colts in football. Unfortunately, he injured his hamstrings and left football, only to basically be signed in 1974 with the Oakland A's for $40,000 as specifically a pinch runner. And knowing nothing about baseball or base stealing or about the game, Maury Will, who we've mentioned before with his 104 record stolen bases, was brought in to teach Herb Washington how to steal bases. And when he came into the team, he actually replaced another speedster named Alan Lewis, who was nicknamed the Panamanian Express. So Herb Washington just played from 1974 to 1975, professional pinch runner, and that it turns out that the owner of the A's was able to get through a rule, together with Alvin Dark, the manager, of 3 times per game that a player could be substituted by a pinch runner, and this correspondingly made use of the skills of Herb Washington. In May the 2nd, 1975, Herb Washington played his last MLB game, and you can see on the back of his card that he had 105 appearances, scoring 33 runs, stealing 31 bases, and getting caught stealing 17 times. That gives him a lifetime total stolen base percentage of 64.5%, which is just below what is considered average. But nonetheless, he was the only player probably who never used a bat or a glove as a professional Major League Baseball player. Mark Fidrych was kind of a unique ball player that got a lot of recognition, not only because he was a good pitcher, but also his antics. So in 1974, he was the 231st pick in the draft. He was nicknamed the Bird because he resembled Big Bird on Sesame Street because of his crazy antics, things that he did in the pitcher's mound before pitching and after pitching and so forth. He was the 1976 Rookie of the Year, the All-Star starter that year, and he had a 2.34 ERA and a 19-9 1-loss. In 1981, unfortunately, injuries derailed his career, which lasted 5 years. And unfortunately, he died prematurely at the age of 54 in 2009 in a farm accident. Dale Berra, an infielder. Most people have heard of Yogi Berra, and yes, Dale Berra is related to him as his son. He played baseball from 1977 to 1987. He was the son, as I said, of Yogi Berra, famous Hall of Famer for the New York Yankees. And you can see an early picture of him with his dad, when his dad was the Mets manager, back when he played for the Yankees and the Astros. And then Topps even produced a father-son card of Berra and Dale and Yogi's replica of the rookie card. He was named after Dale Mitchell, who had made the final out on Dale Larson's perfect game, probably related to the fact that Yogi was on the Yankees. In 1977, he was the 25th draft pick by the Pirates. And in 1979, he was a rookie. 1984, he was traded to the Yankees and played for his dad, who was a manager at that time. He was returned to backup catcher in 1985 under Billy Martin. In 1986, he was suspended from baseball and released by the Yankees by Pinella because of cocaine, but it was able to be reinstated, and he joined the Astros. In 1988, he retired playing for the Baltimore Orioles. His career, 236 average with 49 home runs, and he wrote a book about his dad, Yogi, in 2019 and came out in 2020. Another player that had an unfortunate career due to injury is Dave God Squad Dravecky. He was a right-handed pitcher, and he played from 1982 to 1989. 1978, he was the 531st draft pick of the Pirates. He made his debut in the Major League in 1983. He was associated with the John Birch Society, which is a far-right U.S. political group at the time. He would forego parties during on the road and participate in Bible study. He was a strong Christian. Unfortunately, in 1988, he was diagnosed with desmoid tumor on his pitching arm, and he had surgery to remove the tumor, plus his deltoid muscle and part of his shoulder. So this unfortunately caused him to experience the following, where he was pitching and he collapsed on the mound and then ended up at the hospital and had this surgery. Now, the reason was the doctors, after the surgery, warned him not to return, but against doctors' advice, his humerus bone snapped during his pitching and he collapsed. It was broken a second time, running to the mound to celebrate, and then he retired. He wrote 2 books, Come Back and You Can Come Back, kind of inspirational stories about a person who suffered this demoralizing surgery and injury, that you can see would come back and pitch or throw the first pitch at games, missing his pitching arm and shoulder, as I was amputated in 1991. His careers was 64 and 57 1 loss, 3.13 ERA, and 551 strikeouts. 1979, Fernando El Toro, Venezuela, left-handed pitcher for the Dodgers, career 1980 to 1997. He was in 1979 from Mexico, and he signed with the Dodgers. He had unorthodox delivery, screwball regularly, which was kind of different for pitchers to throw. And he was a good hitting pitcher. Actually, in fact, he pinch hit for the Dodgers. 1980, he made his major league debut. In 1981, he was the only major league player ever to win both the Rookie of the Year and Cy Young the same year. He started that season 8-0 with 5 shutouts, and that was during a strike year. He was a phenomenon and was kind of used in marketing, as well as covered in Sports Illustrated on 2 covers. 1986, he was a league leader in wins and also won the Gold Glove. So not only was a good hitter, but he was a good fielder. He 1990 pitched a no-hitter, but soon afterwards he had constant struggles with nagging shoulder pain. In 1991, he was unceremoniously released by the Dodgers to the Angels, Orioles, Phillies, and Padres and Cardinals, and he created his career 173 wins and 153 losses, 3.54 ERA, strikeouts, 2024. Again, he was a Cy Young Rookie of the Year winner, a Silver Slugger for pitchers twice, and pitched a no-hitter in the and was in 6 All-Star games. Another player that is known is Dwight Doc or Dr. K. Gooden, played from 1984 to 2000. In 1984, he was a 19-year-old rookie and number 5 draft pick. He had a 98-mile-per-hour fastball and a sweeping curveball, and he was in 4 All-Star games, was Rookie of the Year in a World Series, and pitched a no-hitter. 1985, he won the Cy Young Award, pitching Triple Crown, when he was 24-4 on 1.53 ERA and 268 strikeouts, and he won 1 loss, ERA, and strikeouts, and he was the youngest 20-game winner in 1985. Unfortunately, his career was derailed by cocaine and alcohol addiction, as we have mentioned in other YouTubes about his teammate Darryl Strawberry, and on the cover of Sports Illustrated, they're referred to as the Dead End Kids. He was suspended from baseball in 1995. His addiction continued after retirement, and it led to multiple arrests. And his career was 2,800 innings. He had a 1 loss of 194 to 112, ERA of 3.51, and 2,290 strikes. Certainly, he would have been a Hall of Famer had not he run into these difficulties in his career. An interesting player and a fantastic hitter and home run hitter was Juan Gonzalez. He was a rookie in 1990 with the Texas Rangers at age 19 and played 16 seasons. He was a Puerto Rican, projected to be the next Roberto Clemente, who was also from Puerto Rico, and he played from 1989 to 2005. He was in 1986 signed by the Texas Rangers as an amateur free agent at the age of 16. His major league debut was 1989 September call-up, and his rookie year was 1990. He ended his career with a 295 average and 1,404 RBIs, 79th in Major League Baseball. His hits were 1,936, almost 2,000. On base percentage, 340. He hit 434 home runs during his career. That puts him ranked 48th all time. He had 40 home run seasons 5 times and led the American League in home runs 5 times. In 1994 and 1996, he was the most valuable player and accomplished this before age 30. He got 6 Silver Sluggers and 3 All-Stars. So you would say he is a perfect candidate and should make or have made the Hall of Fame. But unfortunately, on 2 ballots of Hall of Fame, he was the last in 2011, only got 5.2% of the vote. Why? The downfall of Juan Igor Gonzalez was basically injuries and more in terms of his inability to get into the Hall of Fame, PEDs. So in 2002, he had a torn ligament in his right thumb, right calf injury, and back injuries, which hampered his play. and he slumped at the end of his career. He had played after the Rangers. He played with Detroit Indians, Rangers again, Kansas City, actually Indians again. And you can see his stats on his last cards with the Kansas City Royals. He did end his career actually when he was traded back to Cleveland. He was 35 at the time and tore his hamstring in only one at bat for Cleveland. And so what was all these injuries associated with? Well, many will claim that it's due to his use of performance-enhancing drugs and steroids. And in 2006, when Canseco came out with his books Juiced, he actually wrote and claimed in his book that Gonzalez used steroids with him. And when you see this card of the Latin stars that were on the Texas Rangers, you will see Gonzalez, Canseco, Palmeiro, and Rodriguez. Well, Rodriguez and Gonzalez were both from Puerto Rico, and Palmeiro and Canseco were from Cuba, and Canseco, Palmeiro, and Gonzalez were all accused of using steroids, and Rodriguez made the Hall of Fame. Some question, but nonetheless, he was not credited with having used performing-enhancing drugs at the time. So what Hall of Fame category is Gonzalez in? And some will say the most likely no, but crazier things have happened. Dealing with the Shields very shortly, not going to great depth, but it's interesting in terms of his rookie card. Dealing with the Shields appeared first in 1987 on the OPC Canadian, and really didn't appear until later on the official Topps card. The Expos #1 draft pick and 12th overall in the 1987 Major League Draft, and limited release of the card because he played for the Montreal Expos in Canada. The actual rookie card didn't arrive in sets until 1990. In 1990, he did have a upper deck rookie card, number 702, a high number, and it was actually replaced in Bobby Witt's card, which was blacked out due to his pants being unbuttoned. So kind of an interesting kind of history of his card appearance for Delano de Shields. Finally, we'll end with Albert or Joey Belle, 1989 to 2000. In 1987, he was a second round 47th draft pick. Played for LSU, and he was suspended from playing in the College World Series with LSU. He was the 1989 rookie year in the majors. Only player to hit 50 home runs and 50 doubles in a season. He was first to break the $10 million a year compensation for salary. He was a fierce competitor and had a kind of a very agitated temperament. He was intimidating in his stature, as you can see in Sports Illustrated, where they talk about his clock is about to crash. In 1994, he went to alcoholism rehab, was accused of corking bats, attacking teammates and opposing players, refusing interviews, profanity, and having caffeine frenzies. His career stats were 295, 381 home runs, 5-time Silver Slugger, 5 times All-Star, 8 straight seasons of 30 or more home runs, and 100 RBI a season. So he has the potential to be in the Hall of Fame, but because of this temperament and problems with alcoholism and attacking others, possibly he won't have that opportunity to make the Hall of Fame. So if you're interested in learning additional information about the baseball card industry, the history of baseball cards, profiting and investing in baseball cards, or ideas to bring fun back to collecting, which I hope this YouTube has been for you, then be sure to follow us below. Feel free to view our library of YouTube videos, and please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Also, check out our eBay store where we have valuable cards for sale, and many of the ones you see are available that are shown in these videos.